want to do a coffee table project. I haven't had a coffee table at my house for quite some time. We just got some pine here. These were 2x material, so they might be Doug fir or something. Just glued up a couple 2x4s. I didn't show that step because you could start with a 4x4 and just plane it down or cut it till you get it to your desired thickness or width. But let's get started. I'm gonna use domino joiner and put this stuff together, and then I think we're gonna do an ash top out of some ash I milled off the property. So, all right, first thing I want to do is mark which side I'm gonna use the joiner on, and that's just a function of which side has the most knots. That's the one that I want on the inside of the table. You're gonna see that less, so put an X on those for now. This side right here. All right, so since my apron boards are 3 inches wide, I know I can fit 2 dominoes in there. I'm gonna put one at 7/8 and then another from this side from 7/8, but really I wanna measure everything from one side. So I'm gonna do 7/8 and then 2 1/8, and I'm gonna measure everything like that. So on these legs, I'll mark 7/8, and then I'll come down and mark 2 1/8. You wanna make sure you're taking all your measurements from one plane, otherwise you're gonna have issues when you go to put everything together. All right, so my apron boards are 1 inch thick. I set my domino depth to 3/4 inch. So my domino is gonna go in at 3/4 from this face, this outside face. So I'll end up with a little bit of a reveal there, like a 1/4 inch reveal. Now you can join these apron boards and legs with a biscuit joiner. You can use dowel joinery. You definitely don't need a domino joiner. The reason I'm using the domino joiner is just because my dad bought it and I had never used it and wanted to give it a shot. So certainly don't need anything special to do this joinery here. And there we got our dominoes board, obviously 90 degrees from one another, so do that on the rest of them. Okay, so that's what those look like. Now I want to do another set of aprons around the bottom for a bottom shelf that's going to sit on, but I want that to sit in further than these holes, so I need to adjust the depth of this, and I don't think I can get the depth out of this that I want. Actually, maybe. So I might be able to just reference from that same face, but if not, I'm gonna do some measurements. If I can't, what I'll have to do is reference from this face and then flip it over and reference from this face, and that'll get me in where I need to be. So I'll have a bigger reveal here. If you look at this apron from the outside, this one will be pretty close to the outside of the leg that you're gonna see, and this one will be inset. And that's what that's going to look like. You can see this top skirt is going to be much closer to the outside face than these bottom skirts are going to be. All right, the legs are all set, with the exception of this one, which I referenced from the wrong face. Put dominoes in the wrong spot here. That's easy to fix, especially on a paint project like this one. If we were going to stain it, that probably wouldn't. It wouldn't be a big deal because you're never going to see it. The skirt board is going to be here. You're gonna be looking from this side, but I'll show you how we can very easily fix that for a project we're gonna paint. So I've got all my skirt boards cut. I've got 4 for the top, 4 for the bottom. It's gonna be slightly longer, wider one way than it is the other. So I've got 2 of each for the top and bottom. So now we have to put dominoes in these, and the thing you want to remember here is you want to reference from the same face. So when you put the domino holes in that end, you want to reference from this top face, and then you want to reference from the same face over here when you put them in on this side. If you go from this side and then you flipped over and you went on that side, there's a good chance that they're going to be off. Even if you set your depth of your domino at half the thickness of your board, it's probably not going to be exact. And obviously we got to measure so that they line up here with our holes we already drilled here. So in this case, it'll be 7/8 and then 2 1/8, 7/8, 2 1/8. And that's for all of them so that they'll line up here and here. So before I do that, I want to pick my faces here. And same thing, I'm just going to pick whatever side has the least amount of knots, and that's going to be my face that shows. I'll just flip all of those up, and we'll reference all of these cuts off of that face. And then I want to measure from this edge on all of these. It's very important. So I got this fence here set to 1/2 inch, which is half the thickness of my skirt board. All right, so I got this coffee table kind of took apart here. I'm gonna start gluing everything up. I'm gonna glue the 2 ends, and then I'm gonna put the side rails in after these are all glued up and dried, and then we'll glue everything together. So my rough dimensions here, like, call it 50 by 40. So I want to make my top just kind of rough off the cuff dimensions, probably 52 by 42, and that'll give me an inch overhang on each side. But I'll probably do a little bit bigger. Let's call it 54 by 44. So I've got this ash here. This has been kind of drying in a sticker stacked stack at my house. It's pretty dirty, so I'm gonna clean it up with a wire brush real quick, and then we'll start getting this down to our rough dimensions that we're gonna need for the top. I want to get these just cut to their rough length. I said 54 inches, so I'm just gonna square one end up and then cut my 54 out. Set this up. Just do 55, I guess. All right, so my joiner can take just over a 7-inch board. So you should be able to see that's cupped pretty bad. So what we're gonna do is joint this face here, and then that'll flatten that side. And then that'll give us our rough thickness, whatever we're gonna end up at. We're not sure exactly how thick this is gonna have to be when we get all our operations done to get everything flat. So I'll just kind of show you one full operation here for the sake of time, but this is something I got to do to each of those boards. So you see I still got a couple little low spots there. I'm just gonna leave those because when I sand, I should be able to get those out, and I can put that on the bottom anyway. But now when I run it through the planer, I've got a flat face to run across the bottom fence here. Now I know I got two planer faces here. What I would do next is go back over to the joiner and put this one of the two flat faces up against the fence and join it on the edge join it. So on that last pass, you could hear that it took material off the entire length of this board. So that should be edge jointed now. So now what you want to do is you want to run it to the table saw, get your end width out of this board. You basically just want to trim this side up, square it up a little bit, and then you'll run it through the joiner one last time just to make sure that this edge is 90 degrees perpendicular to this face. All right, I've got all my tabletop boards prepped here, live edge on both of the outsides, and then I'm gonna do a glue up, I think, of half the boards at a time. So basically, you know, this side of the boards and then this side of the boards, and then I'll put both sections together at the end. That's just gonna make it a whole lot easier because there's a ton of glue here, and it's gonna be very difficult to get everything glued and clamped before stuff starts to set up. So that's the plan. All right, this is where it gets a little hectic, but I've got my glue here. I'm using Titebond 3. This is the waterproof stuff. You could use Titebond 2. Doesn't matter either way for a coffee table. And then I've got my biscuits in the bottom of these boards here, so I can just flip these down after I get glue on this surface and put them together. I might put a little bit of glue on each side, each side of the board. That way I know I've got full glue adhesion, and then we'll get everything clamped up. I've got my roll clamps here, and then I've got 5 for the top, all set to go. They're all pretty much set to the width I need them. So you want to get this done obviously before it starts to set up. That's the critical part here, so see how it goes.
So I know I took some video of making the biscuit holes, and I don't know where that went. But I wanted to use biscuits. Basically, it just helps with alignment, and the way I laid all those out is I just laid all my boards flat and lined them up the way I wanted them to turn out as the tabletop, and took a straight edge, drew lines all the way across each of the faces, and that told me where to make each of my biscuit holes. You also want to make sure, just like the domino joiner, that you reference everything off of the same face. So once you lay everything down flat like this kind of is, you want to make sure you reference all of the biscuit holes from either the top face or the bottom face. You don't want to mix and match, otherwise you're going to have alignment issues and it's not going to be good. So can't find that footage. It's really not that critical though to the project, but I did want to use biscuits because, one, it helps everything remain much stronger, especially on a top of this size, and it helps align everything the way that you want.
So there's my coffee tabletop in 2 glued up pieces. Planed these boards down, ran them through the joiner, the table saw, got one end cut square. I'll cut them to length when I figure out how long I actually want them. But this is kind of what I'm thinking. I'm just gonna nail these in on the bottom. Obviously these will be notched so that they can go around the legs here. So I'm gonna notch those, and I want the same reveal or overhang on this side, this end, as I do that end, so it'll basically be a square cut here. Alright, little filling, a little sanding, and this thing will be ready for paint. But I do believe I'm going to take and round these edges over with the router all the way across, just to soften everything up a little bit, give it a little bit of detail, and that way, so if the boards aren't completely even too, you won't really notice that once you know, the adjoining edges are rounded over. So I'm gonna do that quick, and then I'll be right back. Alright, to me that looks a whole lot better because you don't have all those straight edges trying to line up all the way across. They're rounded over, so these boards don't have to be 100% even. And I'm going to go through And I've got 2 supports in the center, go across, and then obviously here on each end, and I'm going to nail a couple 3 brad nails into each one of these. And like I said, got to go through, fill a couple knots, a couple low spots, but I'll show you guys how I'm going to do that. So I think next I want to do something to these legs just to give them a little bit more detail, to shape them up a little bit. So let's do that.